Something shifted the moment you arrived here, and deep down, a part of you already knew this message would find you tonight. Not by accident. Not because you were searching for drama or fear or answers to impossible questions, but because your heart has been carrying a strange weight lately that no one else seems able to notice. There is a silence you have been trying to ignore. A silence that appears after certain conversations, after certain pauses. After the moments where their energy suddenly changes and you pretend not to feel it because love sometimes teaches people to hold on tighter instead of listening closer. But listen now. Quietly. Carefully. Because this is not the ending your mind has been imagining. Something far more meaningful is unfolding beneath the surface, and if you stay till the end, you may finally understand why your spirit has felt restless even during moments that were supposed to feel secure. The person you love has been standing between comfort and curiosity, between familiarity and distraction, between what feels real and what only appears exciting from a distance. And perhaps the hardest part is this: they may not even realize how much their uncertainty has been affecting you. Some souls drift slowly before they ever physically leave. It happens in little ways first. A delayed reply that once came instantly. A warmth that feels slightly quieter than before. The strange sensation that you are talking to someone who is present, yet emotionally somewhere else for just a few seconds at a time. And because your heart notices details others overlook, you have been collecting these moments silently, asking yourself questions you were too afraid to speak aloud. Was it something you said? Something you failed to become? Did love somehow lose its light without warning? No, beloved soul, the truth is far more delicate than that. Sometimes people become drawn toward another person not because they have discovered something greater, but because they are temporarily escaping the depth of what real connection requires. There is someone around them now whose presence feels easier, lighter, less emotionally demanding. Someone who arrived during a season where your person began questioning themselves quietly inside. And instead of communicating that confusion honestly, they began leaning toward the comfort of being emotionally distracted. But don't misunderstand this moment. This is not a story about betrayal. This is a story about emotional immaturity colliding with genuine connection. There is a difference. One creates destruction intentionally. The other creates distance accidentally while trying to avoid inner conflict. And the reason this message found you is because you have been blaming yourself for changes that were never fully yours to carry. Don't skip this part, because something important is waiting for you in the realization you have avoided for too long. Love should never force you to abandon your peace just to feel chosen. Yet lately, you have been shrinking parts of yourself emotionally, becoming quieter about your needs, more patient than your heart truly feels. Hoping that if you remain understanding long enough, they will suddenly return to you with the same certainty they once had. But the soul becomes exhausted when it constantly waits for reassurance that should flow naturally. And somewhere recently, perhaps late at night, perhaps during a moment no one else witnessed, you felt it. That sudden ache that arrived without warning. That realization that no matter how much affection exists between two people, confusion can still create distance if honesty disappears. Still, this story is not finished. Because what your person is experiencing now is not clarity. It only looks like clarity from the outside. In reality, they are entering a season where appearances and emotions are beginning to separate. The excitement of being noticed by someone new has created emotional noise around them. But noise fades when reality becomes quiet again. And when that silence finally arrives, they will be forced to confront something they have been avoiding for a long time, the difference between temporary validation and genuine emotional safety. You, beloved child, have represented safety to them in ways they rarely admitted aloud. Your presence calmed storms they never explained. Your understanding reached wounds they pretended did not exist. And sometimes people run from the very love that sees them too clearly because deep connection can feel terrifying when someone is not fully healed inside. But wait, because there is another truth approaching slowly now, one that changes everything you thought this situation meant. The distance you feel is not only revealing their confusion. It is also revealing your hidden strength. And over the next part of this journey, you will begin to understand why certain connections are tested not to destroy them, but to reveal who each person truly becomes when uncertainty enters the room quietly. A strange thing begins to happen when someone feels you slipping emotionally, even if they are the one creating the distance in the first place. They start watching you more carefully. Not openly, not in obvious ways, but through quiet observations they never speak about aloud. They notice when your energy changes. They notice when your replies become calmer instead of anxious. They notice when your silence no longer sounds wounded, but reflective. And lately, whether you realize it or not, something inside you has started changing in a way they did not expect. The version of you that once chased clarity is slowly becoming someone who is beginning to understand their own worth without needing constant reassurance to prove it. Stay till the end. Because this part matters more than you think. There is a hidden shift taking place beneath everything you can currently see, and the person you love is far more emotionally conflicted than they appear on the surface. The connection pulling them towards someone else feels exciting partly because it exists outside of responsibility. Outside of depth. Outside of the emotional mirror that true closeness creates. New attention can feel intoxicating to a confused heart because it asks for very little in the beginning. It feels light. Effortless. Untouched by difficult conversations or emotional accountability. But real love, the kind that lingers in someone's soul long after conversations end, carries weight. Not heavy weight. Sacred weight. The kind that asks two people to be emotionally honest even when honesty feels uncomfortable. And somewhere along the way, your person became afraid of confronting their own inner uncertainty. Instead of expressing that fear directly, they drifted toward distraction because distraction is easier than vulnerability for people who do not yet know how to sit with their emotions honestly. Yet every time they move emotionally closer to this other connection, something unexpected keeps happening. Thoughts of you return at strange hours. Not dramatic thoughts. Not cinematic fantasies. Small memories. The kind that hurt quietly because they feel real. The way you listened when they were overwhelmed. The moments where you understood their mood before they explained it. The strange comfort of your presence during ordinary days. Human hearts rarely miss perfection. They miss consistency. Safety. Familiar warmth. And even now, while they are trying to convince themselves they are exploring a different emotional path, your energy keeps reappearing in the spaces where silence becomes too loud to ignore. There have already been moments where they compared someone else's attention to yours without meaning to. Moments where laughter felt temporary instead of grounding. Moments where conversations looked exciting outwardly but somehow left them emotionally emptier afterward. This is the part people rarely talk about when emotions become complicated. Attraction can pull someone in quickly, but emotional peace reveals itself slowly. And your person is beginning to experience the difference without fully admitting it to themselves yet. But listen carefully now, because this next realization may change the way you view your own pain. The reason this situation has affected you so deeply is not simply because you are afraid of losing them. It is because you loved sincerely, deeply, purely. You invested emotional truth into something your soul believed was meaningful, and when emotional inconsistency enters a sincere connection, it shakes the nervous system in quiet ways. Suddenly you overanalyze little things. Suddenly your intuition becomes louder at night. Suddenly memories replay in your mind searching for clues you may have missed. And while you have been doing this internally, the person you love has been standing in emotional confusion, unaware of how intensely you have been carrying the weight of uncertainty alone. But something important is beginning to happen now. You are no longer reacting the same way you once did. There was a time when every delayed message felt personal. A time when every emotional shift made your chest tighten instantly. A time when you were willing to overextend your patience just to avoid losing the connection. But exhaustion eventually teaches the heart what advice never could. It teaches you that love cannot survive peacefully where only one person is consistently fighting for emotional clarity. And although your heart still aches sometimes, another feeling has quietly started rising beneath the sadness: awareness. The awareness that your value does not decrease because someone else becomes uncertain. The awareness that genuine love should not require you to abandon your emotional stability just to remain close to someone. The awareness that confusion inside another person is not proof that you failed to love correctly. Don't skip ahead emotionally from this moment. Something meaningful is unfolding here. Because while you have been grieving the possibility of losing them, your person has unknowingly started feeling the possibility of losing access to the version of you that always remained emotionally available no matter how distant they became. They assumed your patience would remain endless. They assumed your understanding would always wait quietly in the background while they sorted through their emotions. But people rarely realize the value of emotional safety until they feel it slowly becoming less accessible. And recently, your energy has changed just enough for them to feel it intuitively. You may still love them deeply, but your soul is beginning to pull away from emotional chaos without fully realizing it yet. That shift terrifies them more than they understand. Because the other connection may offer excitement, but you offered emotional home. And there is a difference between being desired and being deeply understood. One feeds the ego temporarily. The other touches the soul permanently. Right now, your person is standing in a space where they are trying to convince themselves that moving toward someone else might simplify their emotions. But emotions do not simplify through avoidance. They only become delayed. Eventually truth returns quietly. It always does. Sometimes through loneliness. Sometimes through comparison. Sometimes through the painful realization that the person who truly cared became emotionally tired while waiting to be valued properly. There is already guilt forming inside them, even if they have not expressed it directly. Small moments of guilt. Fleeting realizations. Sudden emotional discomfort after certain interactions. They are beginning to notice the contrast between temporary attention and authentic emotional depth, and that realization is unsettling them more than they expected. Yet pride still keeps them silent. Fear still keeps them emotionally divided. And so they continue pretending to themselves that they are exploring happiness when, in truth, they are trying to escape emotional responsibility. But the soul cannot outrun truth forever. Especially not when someone genuine has touched their heart deeply. Something important is waiting for you beyond this painful season, and it is not merely whether this person chooses you or someone else. It is the awakening happening within you right now. The awakening that teaches you to stop measuring your worth through another person's confusion. The awakening that reminds you love should add peace to your life, not constant emotional instability. The awakening that slowly transforms heartbreak into self-respect without hardening your heart completely. Because despite everything, you have not become bitter. Hurt, yes. Tired sometimes, yes. But not cruel. Not closed. Not emotionally empty. And that softness inside you. That rare ability to still care deeply after disappointment, is something more valuable than you currently realize. Your person sees it too. Even now. Especially now. That is why they remain emotionally conflicted instead of fully detached. If they truly felt nothing, this would already be over quietly. But unresolved emotions linger because part of them understands what they risk losing. They feel it during still moments. During lonely evenings. During conversations that lack the emotional depth they once took for granted with you. And although they may continue drifting emotionally for a little while longer, the illusion surrounding this other connection is already beginning to crack in subtle ways. Not dramatically. Quietly. Naturally. The excitement is becoming harder to maintain consistently. The emotional novelty is beginning to reveal ordinary imperfections. And once excitement settles into reality, people inevitably compare how they feel internally around different connections. That comparison is approaching faster than they realize. But before that realization fully arrives for them, another realization must arrive for you first. You cannot spend your life waiting for someone else to recognize your value before you recognize it yourself. Read that again slowly inside your spirit. Because this is the lesson hidden beneath the entire situation. You were never meant to lose yourself while trying to keep someone close. Love is not supposed to feel like endless emotional guessing. It is not supposed to leave you questioning whether your care matters. And although your heart still hopes for clarity, your soul is beginning to understand something far more powerful. The right connection will never require you to compete for basic emotional certainty. There is still more unfolding behind the scenes than you currently know. Conversations you have not heard. Thoughts they have not admitted. Feelings they are trying unsuccessfully to suppress. And in the next part of this journey, the emotional mask they have been wearing begins slipping in ways even they cannot fully control anymore. There is a moment that arrives quietly in every emotionally complicated connection, a moment where pretending becomes more exhausting than honesty. Your person is approaching that moment now, even if outwardly they still appear uncertain, distracted, or emotionally distant. Something inside them has started resisting the version of the story they tried convincing themselves was easier. Because when the noise fades at the end of the day, when the attention from others becomes temporary background sound, when the excitement loses its shine for just a few honest seconds, the heart begins returning to what felt emotionally real. And lately, those returns have been happening more often than they expected. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough to unsettle them. Enough to make them pause during ordinary moments and suddenly think of you without warning. Enough to make them wonder why certain conversations with someone else still fail to create the calm they once felt simply sitting beside you in silence. Don't skip this moment. Because something important is unfolding beneath the surface of everything you can currently see. Your absence emotionally is beginning to speak louder than your presence once did. That happens when someone becomes so accustomed to your patience that they stop noticing how much emotional stability you quietly brought into their life. They assumed you would always remain available, always understanding, always waiting with the same open heart no matter how inconsistent they became. But now there are moments where they feel your energy pulling inward instead of reaching outward, and it creates a strange emptiness around them they cannot fully explain. They check for your warmth indirectly. They revisit old conversations. They remember details they once overlooked. Because distance has a way of revealing emotional truths that closeness sometimes hides beneath routine. And while they are trying to understand their own confusion, you are slowly transforming in ways they did not expect. There is a quieter strength in you now. A deeper awareness. You still care, perhaps more than you admit aloud, but you are beginning to realize that loving someone should not require constant emotional survival. Somewhere recently, maybe during a sleepless night or a strangely peaceful morning, you felt a shift inside yourself. A realization that no matter how deeply you love another person, you cannot carry the entire emotional weight of a connection alone. That realization hurt at first because it forced you to stop romanticizing inconsistency. But hidden inside that pain was freedom. Real freedom. The kind that arrives when the soul stops begging to be chosen and starts remembering its own value again. And strangely enough, this shift within you is becoming impossible for your person to ignore. They sense it in the way you speak now. In the energy behind your silence. In the absence of desperation they unconsciously expected from you. Human beings often notice emotional security most when it begins slipping away quietly. And the truth is, they never expected you to start emotionally detaching from the chaos. They thought your love would keep holding the door open endlessly while they sorted through their uncertainty. But your spirit is tired now. Not bitter. Not cold. Just tired of carrying questions with no clear answers. Tired of searching for reassurance in someone who keeps sending mixed emotions instead of clarity. Tired of shrinking your own emotional needs just to preserve temporary closeness. Stay till the end, because the next realization changes everything. The person they thought they were moving toward so confidently is beginning to reveal emotional limitations they did not notice in the beginning. The connection still exists, yes. But reality is slowly replacing fantasy. And fantasy always fades fastest when someone has already experienced deeper emotional intimacy elsewhere. They are starting to notice the lack of emotional understanding. The surface-level conversations. The absence of true emotional safety during difficult moments. Because attraction may begin connections, but emotional depth determines whether they survive reality. And reality has started arriving quietly now. There have already been moments where they felt unexpectedly lonely even while receiving attention from someone else. Moments where they realized excitement does not automatically create emotional peace. Moments where your absence suddenly felt heavier than they anticipated. But pride still keeps them from admitting this openly. Fear still whispers that turning back emotionally would force them to confront the confusion they tried avoiding in the first place. So they remain stuck between two emotional worlds, one that feels temporarily exciting, and one that felt deeply real. Yet the soul cannot remain divided forever. Eventually truth rises to the surface through exhaustion alone. And your person is becoming emotionally exhausted trying to outrun feelings they never fully resolved. But this story is no longer only about them. That is the part you must understand now. Something sacred is happening within you during this painful chapter. You are learning how to love without abandoning yourself. You are learning that your softness does not need to disappear just because someone failed to handle it carefully. You are learning that emotional maturity means recognizing when a connection begins harming your peace more than nourishing your spirit. And perhaps most importantly, you are learning that being deeply lovable and being deeply chosen are not always the same thing in someone else's season of confusion. Sometimes people meet genuine love before they are emotionally prepared to protect it properly. That truth is heartbreaking, but it is also freeing. Because it means their uncertainty was never proof that you lacked worth. It was proof they lacked clarity within themselves. And as this realization settles into your spirit slowly, your energy begins changing even more. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop chasing emotional reassurance every time their mood shifts. You stop measuring your value through their attention. And the moment that transformation becomes complete, everything between you begins shifting in ways neither of you fully expected. Because the version of you they became emotionally dependent on was always available, always waiting, always emotionally reachable no matter what happened. But now there is mystery around you again. Not games. Not manipulation. Just self-respect quietly returning to its rightful place. And that change forces them to confront feelings they were able to avoid while your love remained endlessly predictable. Something important is waiting just ahead, a conversation, a realization, an emotional turning point neither of you can fully see yet. The silence between you is becoming heavier with unspoken truth. The emotional distance is beginning to expose what each of you truly feels underneath pride, fear, and confusion. And soon, very soon, the heart that wandered searching for certainty will have to face the difference between temporary distraction and the kind of connection that leaves fingerprints on the soul long after the world grows quiet.